In this online class, I'm creating a hybrid between a tart and a cake. It has a chocolate sablé base, strawberry jam, which you'll find in our online classes library. It's topped with a chocolate cake. It then has a combination of fresh strawberries and piped chocolate cremeux. Then it is topped with a ring of chocolate sablé. Very easy to create, but delicious to eat. Starting with the sablé, I'm going to combine unsalted butter, which I've cubed to make it easier to mix. You can have this at room temperature, but it can also be straight from the fridge. The main difference is if it's at room temperature, the sablé will need a little bit more time in the fridge to firm up before you roll it. If the butter you've diced is straight from the fridge and you make the sablé, you'll be able to roll it a little bit faster. It won't need as much time in the fridge. Some pure icing sugar sieved. Combine those two ingredients until the butter is completely smooth and you don't have any lumps of butter. Now that the butter is smooth, I'm going to add in the orange zest, egg yolk. Now that that's combined, ensure that you scrape down in between each application of ingredient, especially when you're working with small amounts like this. I'm going to combine some almond meal or ground almonds with the plain flour, some Dutch processed cocoa powder, and some baking powder. Add the dry ingredients in. Just mix until it comes together as a dough. Once you've pressed it into a neat flat square, place it in the fridge just until it's firm enough to roll out, which may take between 30 minutes to an hour. The pastry has chilled. I'm going to lightly dust the bench surface with flour. Use the same flour that you use in the sablé, so an all-purpose or a plain flour. Lightly dust the surface. Then gently roll it out to 2 to 3 millimeters in thickness. Every second or third time that you roll the pastry, make sure that you lift it up and put additional flour if needed underneath. Don't add too much flour, particularly with a chocolate pastry, because it will show up. You can also roll this between 2 sheets of baking paper without the flour if you want to, but you will need to chill it before cutting it. First thing I'm going to cut is a base. Using a 200 millimeter ring, we're also going to bake the cake in this. So we use the same ring for the base, the cake, and also the sablé ring as a garnish on top. Any excess, don't scrunch it up, but just fold it. Lift the pastry up. And I'm placing it on a tray lined with what we call a silpain mat, which allows air to travel through. You can also use a perforated tray. When we place the pastry down, we do sometimes trap small pockets of air, which will expand with the heat of the oven and give you little blisters. So this mat will help to avoid that happening. Now the leftover pastry, I'm going to place into the fridge for about 20 minutes and re-roll it for the top. That's just to avoid wastage. You can re-roll the pastry once or twice without it getting too tough, but it's important that you don't knead it or work it too much because you don't want to develop the gluten. Cut the outside one. We utilize a 200 millimeter ring again to make the outside cut. The ring that we're using to cut on the inside is 150 millimeters. The width of this ring doesn't really matter, and if you have bowls that are a similar size, you can use those as well to cut. Make sure that you've lined it up so it's even. Place the outside ring on the tray. Use the ring to resize it. So it may distort a little bit when you pick it up. Just use the outer ring and then the inner ring just to Even up the edges. That will bake at 170 degrees Celsius in a fan-forced oven to between 15 to 18 minutes. If you bring it out and it's a little bit soft, you can simply place it back into the oven. When it comes out of the oven, we're going to gently dust both pieces with Mycryo cocoa butter, which is the powdered form cocoa butter. If you haven't got Mycryo cocoa butter, you can use standard cocoa butter and grate it on. If you've got neither of those, just leave it off. The cocoa butter will actually help to seal the pastry and stop it absorbing moisture from the fillings we're placing on top. If you don't seal it, if you don't use the cocoa butter, it will soften a little bit faster, but it will still be fine to serve for a couple of days. Now for the chocolate cake, all the dry ingredients get mixed together in a bowl. These have been pre-sieved. So that's plain flour, Dutch processed cocoa powder, sugar, salt, baking powder, bicarb soda. Just going to mix these ingredients together even though they're dry, just with a whisk. I'm going to add all the liquid ingredients excluding the water. So I have some coconut oil, which is going to make the cake nice and moist. Eggs, which I've broken up. Buttermilk. Vanilla bean paste. Mix the liquids together. You can easily do this by hand. You don't have to use a mixer. While that's mixing, I'm going to lightly grease the same ring I use for the pastry, so it's 200 millimeters. I have a piece of baking paper here, which you'll see is slightly larger than the ring. And I've just feathered the edge. I just made small cuts about 10 millimeters apart. Place that into the ring. So the feathered edge just sits on the side. Place the baking paper just a strip slightly higher than the ring, and then a smaller piece to fill that gap. Now this particular cake can be made in any size that you like. You can make individuals, you can make a large one, you can make a square, but I've used the same ring to cut the sablé as I am baking the cake because I want it to all align and be exactly the same size. I'm adding our mixed dry ingredients into the liquid. Just lightly mix that together, don't over mix it. Lastly, add in the hot water. The water will sit on top a little bit before it incorporates in. Just mix it on a slow speed, or if you're mixing it by hand, just gently mix it till it fully incorporates. Pour the mixture into the prepared cake ring. If you have a cake tin, you can use that as well, and then use that to trace around to create your sablé. This is going to go into the oven at 170 degrees Celsius in a fan-forced oven. To test when the cake is ready, you can place a metal skewer into the cake and it should come out clean. It should also bounce back when you gently touch the surface of the cake. This is a strawberry jelly. Now I am using a mold. This is a small truffle mold. You don't have to use a mold for this. You can simply set the jelly into a container, which will give you squares. What you need to keep in mind is the height of the jelly needs to be the same height that your strawberries are going to be. In my mind, this is a perfect mold for this dish because the height of the jelly is going to be the same height as an average strawberry. First step, pre-soak the gelatin in a bowl of cold water. We do have some great tutorials on gelatin if you're unsure how to interchange one gelatin for another type. I'm using a strawberry puree, which is a French product called ravi fruit. The seeds have been sieved out and it's had between 10 to 15% sugar added to it. You can make this so easily yourself, just simply by blitzing in the food processor or with a stick blender some strawberries. Weigh the strawberry that you need, allowing for 10% inverted sugar to be added. If you don't have inverted sugar, you can just simply add 10% of normal granulated sugar to the strawberry puree. Now with red fruits, they oxidize. So the higher the percentage of water in the fruit, the more they're going to change color when heated. For that reason, I'm not going to heat the full amount of the strawberry puree. I am only going to heat 1/3. Now, by only heating 1/3, this isn't pasteurized. So it is going to shorten the shelf life of the jelly. But if I look at all the elements of this dish, the shelf life of the jelly will hold perfectly with the other components. So just pouring 1/3 into a saucepan. Now I'm using that 1/3 to dissolve the sugar. So add the sugar in, and you'll notice a difference in color once I start heating it. It's just starting now to go slightly darker. You don't have to boil it, you simply just have to dissolve all the sugar. That's all dissolved now. I'm going to turn that off. But I don't know if you can see there the color difference. It's just slightly darker, but the more you heat it, the darker it will go. I'm going to place it in the pre-soaked gelatin. Just squeeze the gelatin a little bit to remove any excess water, but you see that it still has a little bit of moisture in there. It really does depend how long you soak it for. It should absorb 5 parts water. Stir that through until it's fully melted. I'm going to pour this in now to the strawberry puree and mix the two together to ensure that the gelatin doesn't set. You can pour the raspberry puree with a jug, but I have a depositor, so I'm going to utilize that to pour it into the mold, which helps you control how much liquid goes in at a time. So when I press down here on my thumb, it's going to release a little ball at the base there, which is going to lift up and allow the liquid to come out. So I'm filling these to the top. Now, if you freeze these, I do recommend, if you're using a different gelatin and you're not quite sure, to defrost one and let it sit on a plate in the fridge or at room temperature and check the consistency to ensure that it is actually going to hold. If it doesn't hold, you can take the frozen jelly, put it on a bain-marie or a double boiler, and without too much heat, just melt the gelatin and add a little bit of extra gelatin before resetting it. These now go into the freezer for at least 4 to 5 hours to fully freeze up so we can unmold them. This is a chocolate crema that we're going to pipe onto our tart cake hybrid. To start with that, we have some cream that we're going to scrape into a bowl. Before I start that boiling, I'm going to combine egg yolks and some sugar. Whisk those two together until fully combined. You don't need to aerate it at all. I've got the standard Callebaut milk chocolate and I've got the 2815, which is a 58% dark couverture. I'm going to combine those together and place a sieve on top. So as soon as the custard, or we call it an anglaise, is ready, I'm going to strain it over the chocolate. By boiling the cream and then adding in the egg yolks, I'm then going to cook it to 80 degrees Celsius. It's important that you don't put the egg yolks in at the start because it's very easy to overcook them and then you'll have a scrambled egg-like mixture rather than a beautiful light creamy custard. So first step, boil the cream. Pour the boiled cream over the mixed egg yolks and sugar and whisk it together. Once again, you don't need to aerate it. At this stage, we lose the whisk and we change to a silicone spatula, or you can use a wooden spoon. We transfer this mixture back into the saucepan. Now you must stir this continuously while it comes up to temperature. This is what we call an anglaise once we cook it, which is a French word for English. So it's a French interpretation of an English custard. It needs to be quite light and fluid. Now you can see by the colour, it does have quite a bit of eggs in it, so it will go very, very quickly. So you need to work with a very low heat. If you're a little bit nervous, you can place this mixture in a bowl and put it on top of a simmering saucepan so you've got a little bit more control over it. We're going to bring the mixture to 80 degrees Celsius. Now it will go up a further 3 degrees, but I tell you to take it off at 80 degrees Celsius to give you a little bit more time because it will continue cooking. I'm going to use a thermometer, but if you don't have a thermometer, the best tool to use is actually a wooden spoon. Now if you dip the wooden spoon in the mixture, wipe your finger across and it runs over the line, it means it's not ready. If it holds, it means it's ready. Doesn't work with a silicone spatula because everything slips off a silicone spatula, so it is best with a wooden spoon. So you can make this quite easily without a thermometer. That's reached temperature, so I'm going to strain it. Strain it immediately, and we strain it because you may have a little bit of cooked egg on the bottom of the saucepan. So put it through a fine sieve, and then we're going to whisk the anglaise through the chocolate. Whisk it together until all the chocolate is melted. It'll look a little bit grainy at the start, but if you continue whisking, it will all come together. And this is called a Cremeux. So it's not aerated, it's quite rich, whereas a chocolate mousse, if you were to compare the two, is lighter because it has whipped cream through it. This has no gelatin, so it's purely set with the anglaise that we thickened and the cocoa butter in the chocolate. Place plastic wrap on the surface. Place that in the fridge to cool until it's firm enough to pipe, which will take about 3 to 4 hours in the fridge. The sablé is cooked and cooled. If needed, you can use the microplane to just take off any of the edges there. You've got usually created from the almond meal. You can just remove a little bit of that on the edge. So place the base down. I have strawberry jam. This is a strawberry jam which is in our video library. You can use a store-bought strawberry jam as well if you don't want to make it yourself. Just spread it out. Don't go right to the edge. Leave a couple of millimeters of the pastry without jam on it. My videographer is saying stop there. She's going to eat that as it is. We don't need to go any further, but wait till you taste it all together. It's beautiful. The chocolate cake is cooled completely, so I'm going to trim it. So using a serrated edge knife, just spinning it around, just mark it to start with, so it's going to be level. Now the chocolate cake's quite dark, and that happens when we add bicarb soda. The bicarb soda makes everything brighter, darker, richer in colour. We don't use it for that reason. We use it to give a little bit of lift and a beautiful tenderness to the chocolate cake. Peel the paper off the cake, and we're going to turn it over so the cut side comes in contact with the jam. This is going to give us a nice even finish without any of the crumbs. Line it up so it's aligned with the pastry. Now the jelly's frozen, unmold them so you can just pull it to the side and pop them out. Now they are going to go darker in colour once they defrost. They'll go back to the colour of the puree when it was in the liquid form. So just pull the silicone mould to the side and pop them out. Now I've washed the strawberries and cut the top off so they're a similar height to the jelly. So I'll start with the strawberry. We place the strawberry on. I'm using a 20mm plain round piping nozzle. If you don't have one of these, don't worry. Just cut the end of the bag to a similar size. The chocolate crema has set beautifully. Have a look at that consistency. Place it into the piping bag. If you've got hot hands, only put a small amount in at a time. We're going to alternate these. So strawberry first, next is the chocolate crema. Strawberry jelly, chocolate crema, and we keep going around. We're going to do a centre row now, doing the same combination. They aren't going to be offset because it's smaller, so you can start. I'm going to pipe in front of the strawberry, alternating the same as we did the first row. This is smaller obviously than the first row, so you are going to get some double ups like we have here with the jelly, but just keep going because the overall finish looks fantastic. Then we place the sablé on top. Do this just prior to serving so you can set all of this up and place it in the fridge, even overnight. But you'll place this sablé disc on just prior to presenting it. Once those strawberry jellies defrost, it looks absolutely amazing. Here we have my very nice cake.